Hi, good morning. Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay. So, welcome to Øredev. Thanks for being in this session. And my name is Rangarajan. I'm a developer advocate from Solace. And today we are going to be talking about event API products and how they maximize the value for your event-driven architecture or EDA. Most of you work in consulting organizations or in in-house organizations or in technical discussions. So do you see these terms that are coming up nowadays, right? So event streaming, event APIs, event meshes, async APIs, things other than just a simple request response or REST APIs, so like guaranteed message delivery, push, fire and forget, publish and subscribe. Are you talking about these topics in your workplace, in your technical trainings? So the question is, what are you doing about these, right? So today what I'm going to do is talk about APIs and events, event-driven APIs, event API products, what they are and how they are helping EDA. We are going to talk about event management portal. So I'm going to be specifying, or at least I'm going to do a small section on Solace PubSub Plus. We're going to talk about AsyncAPI, what it brings to the world of EDA, how it makes developers' lives easier. And I'm going to do a small demo using AsyncAPI and then the PubSub Plus portal. So what are events? Events are usually just a change in state of an application or change in state of something that happens in the real life world, right? So we are surrounded by events usually. So we have something that could just generate customer feedback or an inventory update or something that generates out of a shipping update or a location, maritime events like weather forecast events and stuff like that. IoT devices, they throw up a lot of events nowadays, right? So your coffee maker is probably talking more than, anything else that talks nowadays. So what are we doing with these events? How are we using them? Are we using them effectively? Are we using them efficiently in the right time, in the right place? Gartner, a few years ago, they brought out this nice statement. They say essentially that the value that we generate from our events is directly proportional to the speed or the recency at which we have processed them. We started off with historical processing of data, which used to be 1 month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago. Then we started processing data more recent, relevant in minutes and seconds. But now we are on the age of where we are processing events as they occur, which helps us in doing predictive analysis and being more proactive rather than just reactive. The value, as you can see in the deck, it really increases as you process it as soon as possible. Now, what are APIs? APIs essentially talk about how your computer systems interact. They are usually just a black box which abstract the whole business logic. It just says, you give me A parameters, I'll give you B, right, in the response. They have model semantics where you can exactly know what to expect and when you give what exactly. APIs usually don't have any UI associated with it. They are used to feed into the UI so that you can have relevant UIs. Events, on the other hand, are a change in the application state that has already happened. They are immutable, so you cannot roll back an event. So you cannot say, OK, something has left, and I'm pushing it back. So they cannot really roll back things. Events don't have a known destination. So you can reuse an event as much as you want, as long as it's relevant. So you can, a consumer can push along events n number of times. So there is no limit to it. As long as it is needed, it can be used. What are the main differentiations when you talk about APIs and events? So APIs are usually synchronous. So you make a request, you wait till you get back a response, and then do something with it. Events, on the other hand, they are asynchronous. A publisher will simply publish an event to an event broker. That's pretty much it. And then it doesn't really care who is consuming, who is doing what with the event. It'll just be focused on, I'm publishing something, I'm done. APIs are usually more pull interactions. So you say you poll for information. OK, is it done? Do I have something? Do I have something? Events, on the other hand, are more about getting information in the right time when it occurs to the right parties. So they are push interactions mostly. APIs talk about, as I said, request replies. Events usually work with the publish and subscriber model, where you say, I'm going to publish something. I don't care what happens to it. Then you have a consumer which is consuming it, and then you can do whatever you want business logic with it. APIs usually have a lot of internal or external stakeholders or external customers. This is very well nicely done with open API specifications. For example, you build an API, you build a Swagger file or an open API document, you throw it out, and you say, whoever wants to access my API, you can do it. You just need to have the right controls. You just need to have the right parameters for me to work on it. Events, they are mostly internal. You have internal stakeholders within an enterprise, and that is why, because the definition of an event is usually very enterprise specific, right? So even within the same industry or the same domain, IKEA might have a different definition of a customer or different view or model of a customer as compared to something else. So that's why they are usually very tied closely to the enterprise. You do have examples where you can use it outside, quite limited though, yeah? So APIs, you can cache APIs, you can API responses, you can cache them, you can reuse them for a limited duration as long as your data is valid. Events, you can replay events. You can replay events and you can come to the latest state of your system. APIs, they usually work on HTTP, as you know. You can use gRPC nowadays, GraphQL protocols. Events, they work on protocols like AMQP, MQTT, Stomp, WebSockets. APIs, you don't need a mediator in between. Yeah, you can simply say, I am giving a request, I'm getting back a response from the API. Event, they usually require a broker in between. So they need an event broker which can take the event and give it out to all the other consumers who are interested in it. Now, let's look at how the integrations have evolved during the ages, right? So in the 1990s, early 2000s, we had like Go-to languages, we had functions and procedures, we had big EJBs, you used to have those big EAR files. Who remembers those days? 2 hours of building an EAR file and deploying it onto a Unix server. After that came web services, and that's when I started off working in IT. So I still remember that we used to do some CORBA calls somewhere, RPC calls, SOA, service-oriented architecture, big SOAP documents, WSDLs. Those were the fun times, yeah? It was not really very happy. Then we started going out towards APIs. We started breaking down those monoliths. We started making domain-driven APIs, microservices. They came along. They are doing very well, and now we are going towards event APIs. Now, since we started doing APIs, the streamings, the event APIs, etc., what are the benefits of it? We see better customer experience, the better agility in terms of going faster to market, getting more value out of your events or more data, and better robustness in the architecture, better robustness in your applications itself. As we speak about APIs, we have to take a small tour to API management. So what is an API management portal? So you can have APIs that are individual APIs like calculator, something, blah, 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 n number of APIs, you can have them. You usually bundle them together. So some developer or some architect will come together, he will bundle up similar APIs or common functional APIs, and then he'll make them as an API product. And then you can throw them out, you can monetize them. Those are the basics of an API product, right? So bundles of related APIs that serve different business functions. Developers use this API to interact with different business capabilities. They usually don't have a front end. They are used to feed the front end. You can query these APIs, you can get relevant information, and then you can build your whole Angular front end or React front end or whatever. Now, API management portals, they also give a nice way to expose these APIs as a marketplace. So developers and architects can use these APIs to this API tools, API product APIs to expose them to monetize them, to bring out different functionalities to the internal to the enterprise or external to the enterprise. A lot of banks are doing these nowadays. So most of the bigger banks in Netherlands, where I'm from, they have these big API marketplaces where you can subscribe to APIs and then you can use them and you can plug in into open banking softwares and tools and stuff like that. So that's going really well. So we spoke about APIs, we spoke about events, right? So that APIs are the current trend. We are doing a lot of these APIs. We are moving towards events. What's the future? What's the future really? It would be ideally a combination of these two, where you get the strengths of APIs, you get the strengths of events. They come out to be event-driven APIs, right? So you have the best of both the world. Now, I want to do a small differentiation between REST APIs and what event-driven APIs look like, or at least an example of how it would work together. So we all use Amazon. We all use IKEA. We all buy stuff online, especially due to the whole COVID pandemic, right? We went crazy, apparently, buying stuff, shopping online. So you have an order. You have a customer who is placing an order. You have an order service which says, OK, have fun. I've got your order. I've got your money. Let me do my stuff with it. So this is a REST API. You get synchronous communication. You get the customer is happy that, OK, my order is acknowledged. My money is gone. I'm happy. This order service, it can then send an event to the event broker. To the event broker, and it says, I have an event. Do have fun with it. You can have n number of services, like an inventory service, a marketing service, a stocking service, a CRM, whatever. They could all link to the same event, and they could do different things with it. Is it just one directional? No, it's bidirectional, right? So you could have a shipping service which says, OK, I took your event, I took your order, I took your product IDs and stuff. I'm going to do shipping for it. I give you information about your shipping updates, your tracking updates, your track and trace details. These events can be published back to the portal, or broker, sorry, and the order service can listen to these events, and it can send it back to the customer as event updates. It can shipping updates. So the customer knows what is exactly happening with my order. When am I going to receive it? How many deliveries am I going to get it in, right? So it is better customer experience. So the user doesn't really have to keep polling information saying, OK, where is my order? Where is my order? The relevant information gets pushed out to you in the right time. Is this it? Is this all you can do with it? No, not really. You can extend it to how many ever layers you want. You could have suddenly a marketing service which says, OK, you know what? I'm going to look at cross-selling and upselling opportunities. I'm going to take your order. I'm going to see what I can do best more with it, how I can help you more sell. You can do those things. OK, so we spoke about how event APIs or API products management tools are there, right? So you have, for REST APIs, you have an API gateway or an API management tool like APG, MuleSoft, etc. So they have usually two parts, two components to them. So one, you have a design time where you can define your APIs, you can bundle them up together, and you can say, OK, this is my API. I'm going to have these requests, these responses, and then you have the gateway itself, where you can connect different clients. You can say, OK, this client has access to this API. This is authorization or token or stuff like that. So essentially, big API portal helps you document and catalog your APIs. It can help you design. It can help you discovery. It can help you in distribution. Do we have something corresponding for EDA, for the event APIs? Sure, we do. We have the event brokers. That's a runtime, right? We have the runtime where the event broker can say, these are my producers, these are my consumers, they are consuming these events, these are my matrices. I look at these insights. I'm going to look at how many events are being produced in a second, in a minute, stuff like that. So that's the runtime environment for you. What about the design time? Don't we want to know what APIs, what events we have, what schemas of events we have? So at Solace, we took this idea, and we built out what we called as an event portal, right? Event Portal brings this design time capability, this analysis capability to developers and architects. So we can design events, we can define schemas, we can define events, we can do versioning, we can define the relationship between these events and these applications, and we can see who can produce, who can subscribe. We can achieve the whole thing in there. Now, usually you have a bunch of events in an enterprise. So when you start off with doing EDA, when you start off with working on an event broker, you simply go crazy sometimes. You start up ending creating so many schemas, so many Afro schemas, so many events that you lose track of it. How do you go from 10,000 events or 10,000 schemas to ones that are really, really relevant, ones that are on the enterprise scale, once those can really help you monetize and increase your business value? You have these, right? So this is what I was talking about. So you could have very simple events like a user logs in, a customer logs in, a sign up, and order events. You could have stock allocation, marketing events, promotion events, etc. Not every event is same. Not every event is equally important for an enterprise. Of course, as a product owner or for a technical developer, you might want to know how many people have signed in, how many people have registered themselves. But a chief marketing officer or somebody, or a distribution lead or somebody, he is going to look at how many people have logged in on a daily basis. He's going to be looking at macro numbers. He's going to be looking at those bigger numbers which really make sense for him on a business level. You can filter out and catalog these events, and you can say, on an enterprise level, I'm going to be looking at shipping information, I'm going to be looking at stock allocation, marketing events across different lines. So they don't have to be all events that are linked together or the same events, but they work together to bring you value. You can then bundle up these events, and you can find associated producers, you can find different associated consumers, you can make coherent association between these events and their applications, and you can make them up as event API products. You can say, okay, these are my order events which have been received, which have been shipped, and then they are allocated to, or they are linked to my stock allocation events, and then these are my applications that are going to be actually working on those events. And you can monetize them, you can expose them, and you can generate more value out of it. Now, as you do this, your value and your exposure increases. At a certain stage, you want to distribute it outside. You want to give it to outside and within your enterprise, and outside your enterprise, you want to throw it up like a marketplace. And you want to use, and you can do that with async APIs, with open API, etc. Now, at Solace, we did a lot of research, and we finalized that, or at least we identified that there are 5 steps to really creating an event API product. So the first one is identifying all the events in your system. You identify your usability and value, so you want to assess which events are really important, which events are really local to the application level, but then which are more important on the enterprise level. You want to curate them, that's the next step. You want to bundle and document these high-value events. 4th step, you want to release them. You want to expose them to the consumer applications. You can simply say to a different team or a different area within your enterprise, saying, this is a product that I have, a marketing tool or a shipping tool or shipping API or an order API. Use this. You just need to send in this as a starting point. You just need to send one event to it, and then you are done. You can use my information. You can use my whole functionality. This would be where you start looking at the next steps. That's your evolution and your optimization. We build an application. We don't keep it like that for the rest of its life, right? So we keep on evolving. We fix bugs. We look at new functionalities. We say how we can better improve our applications, our landscape. We do that. All of this has to be done with the right speed, so that you can get the maximum value out of your events, out of your data. So speed is a key thing in all these steps. At Solace, and this is now going to be a little bit more product specific, because I'm going to be talking about how we do this within our Solace PubSub platform. So we have an event broker. which is our proprietary event broker, but we are pretty open source. We really like to work with other things. So we can work with Kafka, we can work with Confluent, Apache, we can use with MSK. You can work with a lot of these things. That's the broker part, that's the runtime part. In the event portal that we had, we can achieve a big association. You can document your schemas, you can document your events, your applications, enumerations, everything, and then you can design the interactions between all of them. Now, the first step in this would be, of course, the discovery of runtime events. We have a runtime discovery agent which you can run on your Kafka cluster, which will go through literally a couple of days, and you can say, okay, it will identify all the events that are generated in your whole landscape. You can then publish it or import it into the PubSub portal. You can associate endpoints and subscriptions with your applications and your events. You can identify and visualize the relationship between an API, between an application and an event. You can do that whole structure. Once you're done with that, you want to go to the curation part, right, or the cataloging part. You want to identify which are the high-value events, which are the events that I want to bundle up together, which makes sense to be bundled up and you release as an API product. Once you are done with that, you can build up these associations nicely. You can build up associations, okay, this is my application A, it's going to publish event A, it's going to consume event B. You can build that whole association graph. And once you're done with that layer, this is where you finally expose it outside. When you start exposing it outside, you can simply have it as a REST endpoint. You can download an AsyncAPI document. You can throw it out for developers to connect to. I spoke about AsyncAPI, and that's what I'm going to detail out more now. So AsyncAPI is essentially an open source initiative. It wants to improve the current landscape that we have for EDA. Its goal is to make working with EDA as it is with REST APIs nowadays. It goes from documentation to code generation, from discovery to event management. Now, let's go to see what OpenAPI does and what AsyncAPI does for REST and event-driven applications, right? So you have an API, which is essentially a black box. You simply don't know what goes within an API. You simply say, all you know is, if I give it these parameters, I get back this in response. EDA application is much more complicated. It usually works with an event broker. An event broker can say, I'm going to have publishers publishing these events. I'm going to have consumers consuming these events. You can have an application which does both. So that's also possible. OpenAPI describes the REST applications. AsyncAPI describes the EDA applications. Now, what does it bring? What do these frameworks or these tools bring to the real world, right, for us? So OpenAPI can say, this is an application. It has this request. This has this response. You can export it. You can have a Swagger file. You can put it up on a marketplace. All the developers have to do is download it and start generating code out of it, right? You can simply build scaffolding code or stub codes, and you can start working with it. AsyncAPI does the same thing for EDA. It defines channels. Channels are essentially a location where events land. So it can have different names like topics, queues, across different event distributions. It says what event is going to land in what topic, who is going to consume this event, who is going to publish this event. You can use this as a standard machine-readable, high-fidelity artifact which will mean the same thing across all the EDA event brokers. You're not going to have Kafka which says, I don't understand this interpretation of AsyncAPI. You're going to have Solace or MSK which says, I don't understand this part. I'm not compatible with it. It's high fidelity. Now, we spoke about REST. We spoke about OpenAPI. We spoke about EDA. We spoke about AsyncAPI. Are they not really compatible with each other? No. they are really compatible with each other because everything has its own strengths and weaknesses and pros and cons. Usually when you buy an IKEA furniture, yeah, they give you all these small nicks and knacks that you can use one thing for that, one specific purpose. It's not like they give you a hammer and say, have fun. You just hammer this out and everything will build up on its own. No, it doesn't work like that. They give you small pieces that you play with, right? That's how it works. So OpenAPI is very useful for interfacing or describing those peripheral interfaces that you're lying outside your enterprise EDA enterprise. These applications, they can generate a lot of events. All of this can be very well documented by AsyncAPI. These events can be bundled up as Event API products, again, very well documented by AsyncAPI. Now, we spoke about a lot of theory. I want to talk about what does it look like in real life, right? Before we start off with the demo, this is just going to be a small sneak peek into AsyncAPI. So an AsyncAPI document has 3 major components. So it talks about the schemas, which are under processing. It talks about the events, which are generated from these schemas, so the model and the implementation itself. And then it talks about the channels or the topics where these events land in. It talks about what kind of application is going to subscribe to them or publish to them, etc. Now, you remember we spoke about the event portal where you could design the whole thing. You could make associations between your applications and events. What do we do with that? Once you have the design time defined, you can export them as an AsyncAPI document. OK, you have a nice JSON or a YAML format document. OK, what do we do with it then? How does it help in going to code from distribution or discovery to code generation? Now, AsyncAPI, the guys at AsyncAPI, they built up a nice generator. Yeah, so it's a CLI tool. You can use this to generate scaffolding code in a lot of different languages. You can work with Node.js templates. You can work with Node.js on WebSockets, NATS, Java, Spring Cloud Stream, Python. You have a bunch of these things. If you are one of those unicorns who are working on something like, say, Rust or Go or Kotlin, etc., you're not really completely alone. You can still build your own generators on this CLI. That's also possible. Having said that, I want to do a small demo of how this looks like and what the code looks like. I'm not sure if a lot of you are Java developers. I am going to do this in Java, unfortunately. Yeah? So is that OK? Wonderful. So when you start looking at, OK, perfect. So this is what the graph that I designed looks like, right? So I really made it in a nice, I actually went through and I defined this as a nice W because it looks nice for me. So when you start, just give me 1 second. I want to exit this. OK. So when you start doing this, here you can define your events. You can define your schemas that you have, what versions control. You can do version controls, etc. You can define your applications. I just have 2 of this, yeah, just for a demo. So I have an e-commerce service and I have a stock service, order service and a stock service. And this is how it looks like. So it says that I have an order placed event, which is subscribed by my e-commerce order service, yeah, and which in turn is generating a stock service, stock event. Just to make it a W, to be honest, I said, OK, I'm going to have a stock service, which is listening to the stock update, which in turn generates a warehouse event. Yeah? So you could say, reduce the stock in this warehouse, something on those lines. Now, you can export this as an async API. Now, you have JSON, YAML. I'm going to go with the JSON because it's easier to read. And I have it downloaded here. I have it beautified, to be honest, here as well. So let's see, e-commerce order service, right? Yeah, I trust the authors. Come on, go ahead. No? What does it do? Come on, man. OK. And I'm going to do a format document. So you see you remember the 3 sections that I talked about before? So these are the schemas, right? So it says I have a warehouse schema in this event. Oh, this is a stock service, but then fine. Okay. I have a stock event or the stock schema. So this is the data model that I'm going to be working around with. These are the payloads or the messages that I have. So that's a stock update event. I'm going to have the warehouse update event. And these are the channels or the topics where it says you can have an event that is coming to this e-commerce, ERP, warehouse, blah, 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 update. Yeah. Similarly, you can have a stock created. You could have these topics. And what it essentially says is this e-commerce stock service is going to publish something to this topic. It's going to subscribe something from this topic. Yeah? So that's how you can use this, interpret this as JSON. But what's the benefit of this is you can really use it to generate code. Now, I have this, which I can show off as well. So this is how a CLI command looks like. I sort of beautified it a little bit so that it looks, I can explain it to you better. So obviously, I want to build a Maven project, so I said I have an e-commerce order service. I'm using a binder, or the broker that I'm going to be using is Solace. Obviously, these are my artifacts or the Maven properties where you define your artifact ID, your group ID, your package ID, and stuff like that. These are your connection parameters. So over here, so the host, that's the thing that you use to connect to your broker, any broker for that matter. This is the name of the file that I'm going to be working with, or the AsyncAPI document that I'm going to be working with. And finally, this is where I define the template which I want the code to be generated in. Now, in this case, I'm going to be using CloudStream, Spring CloudStream. Does anybody have experience with CloudStream? Do you know what it looks like, what it does? Oh, OK. Spring CloudStream is an API from the Spring family, of course. What it does is that it acts like a nice layer, an abstraction layer between your application and your event broker. So essentially something to hibernate, or an ORM framework where you could simply work on any database and you didn't have to worry about whether it was SQL or MySQL or Oracle, whatever. So similar to that, it just comes between your application and your broker. You build code based on Java 8 semantics, on function semantics and utilities, and the underlying framework takes care of communicating with the broker itself. Now, I'm going to take this whole thing, and I'm going to run it into a CLI. When I do this, it takes a bit of time because it goes to the Maven repository and downloads stuff. Once that happens in the background, or what I can do is I did this already for you, and I have this, right? So this is what a generated scaffolding code looks like. It's obviously a Spring Boot application. It says that I'm going to consume an order object. We remember we saw it in the schemas, and then the designer portal over there. It says that I'm going to publish a stock entity or a stock event, and you have all the application properties already there in place for you, right? Because you're defining your brokers, you're defining your username and passwords, credentials, etc. You can use that as a scaffolding code already. Now, what we saw was what are event APIs, what are event API products, how you can, what does AsyncAPI do for you, how you can generate and design event API products in the Solace PubSub, and how AsyncAPI helps in distribution, how AsyncAPI helps in code management and documentation. So what's next, right? I just want to do this. So if you want to learn more about EDA, about our product, about AsyncAPI, if you want to just talk to us, come visit at our booth. We're just outside the hall, just in front of the stage. You can join us at our developer communities. We have a lot of code labs which you can use to learn our product. So, any questions? OK, that sounds nice. Thank you very much for being here. Yeah, thank you.